All right, so we're diving into English grammar today.
Yeah, sounds good.
You know, it's funny. A lot of people get kind of scared when they hear grammar. You know, like it's a big, scary thing.
It does have a reputation, right?
But it really doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
We've got all your stuff here.
Yeah.
And looks like you're interested in some really fun ways to learn.
Yeah, definitely.
Apps and talking with people even. And just reading more. So much good stuff.
I think that's what's cool about language learning in general.
Yeah.
There's so many different approaches, so you can kind of find what works for you.
Exactly.
And you know, at the end of the day, good grammar is about being able to express yourself clearly and confidently.
That's it.
It's a tool for communication.
Okay, so you've got a lot of notes here about wanting to start with the basics.
Yeah.
Like sentence structure and punctuation.
A foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like you already know kind of what the building blocks are, but you
Yeah.
want to get better at putting them all together.
Right. Like knowing what a brick is and a beam is, but not really knowing how to build a house.
Exactly. I love that analogy. And that's where something like English grammar in use can be really helpful because it breaks things down in those steps.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the sources you have here.
Yeah, and it shows you how those basic pieces work together so you can start to see the bigger picture of how sentences are constructed.
Now, you mentioned trying Grammarly, but felt kind of overwhelmed with all the suggestions.
I hear that a lot.
And you were wondering if Pro Writing Aid might be a better fit, since you mentioned your writing style is a little more on the academic side.
Yeah, it is interesting because these tools can be super helpful, but it is about finding the right tool for you.
Yeah.
And so Grammarly can be great for catching those like everyday errors and things.
More casual.
Yeah, if you're writing an email or a blog post or something like that. But Pro Writing Aid tends to be more focused on that flow and clarity of writing.
Oh, okay.
Which can be really helpful if you are working on longer, more complex pieces, you know, like research papers or articles. Now, you mentioned feeling like you don't have a ton of time to practice writing.
Yeah, that's a common one.
You even circled this quote in one of the articles that said, write every day, with a big question mark next to it.
Well, it's good advice, but writing every day might not be realistic for everyone. It really is more about finding consistent pockets of time to practice, even if it's just 15 minutes a few times a week. And it doesn't have to be, you know, sitting down and writing a formal essay.
Yeah.
Think about responding to emails with a focus on the grammar that you're learning.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Or even just jotting down some thoughts in a journal.
Totally.
Yeah.
You've also got a ton of bookmarks for podcasts and news sites. Seems like you're a big fan of learning by listening.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best ways to learn a language, just immersing yourself in it.
Yeah.
Because think about it, when you listen to native speakers, you're absorbing all these grammar nuances without even realizing it.
That's true.
You're picking up on the rhythm, the intonation, the way words are used in context. It's almost like learning by osmosis.
Yeah. And you even wrote down find a language partner, but then you crossed it out and put too scary.
I totally get that. Putting yourself out there can be intimidating.
For sure.
But there are ways to make it less daunting, like apps like HelloTalk, which connect you with people all over the world who are also learning English so you can kind of help each other out and practice together.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, and you can start by just texting and then maybe work your way up to voice or video calls when you feel more comfortable.
Okay, let's talk about actually identifying your tricky grammar areas.
Yes.
You highlighted this whole section about using online quizzes.
Quizzes can be super helpful for a couple of reasons. First, they can give you a good sense of what you already know and what you still need to work on, and then they can also pinpoint those specific areas where you might be tripping up.
Like what?
Oh, like subject-verb agreement or using articles correctly.
Oh, yeah.
Things like that.
You even mentioned in your notes commas.
Ah, yes, the comma.
And when to use who versus whom. You're ready to dive into some serious practice.
Yeah, and the great thing is that there are so many resources available online. You can find websites, videos, even whole books dedicated to mastering commas or figuring out those tricky pronouns.
Now, I've got this whole section here dedicated to online courses, and you've even circled a few on Coursera that caught your eye.
I love online courses. I think they're a great way to learn, especially if you want something that's a little more structured. And you know what's cool about those Coursera courses is that they're often taught by university professors.
Oh, wow.
So you're getting really high-quality instruction, but at your own pace and on your own schedule.
That's amazing. It seems like you're really ready to take your grammar skills to the next level.
You are. And remember, it's all about finding what works best for you. Keep experimenting with different resources. Find what you enjoy. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn and grow.
It's a journey. not a race. So keep exploring, keep practicing, and you'll be amazed at how much progress you make. And who knows, you might even find yourself enjoying the process.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right, that's it for a deep dive today. See you next time.
Bye.
Welcome to English Edge Podcasts. We're back for another deep dive. And today, we're going to be looking at something a lot of you have been asking about. Improving English speaking skills.
Oh, yeah. A big one.
It is this one.
It can be kind of daunting for folks.
It can be.
Yeah.
It really can. And there's a lot of information out there. But we found this really cool guide.
Yeah.
I think it's really practical.
Yeah, it had a lot of you can do this today kind of advice, which I really liked.
Yeah, actionable stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd take a look at that and see if we can help kind of break it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me was this idea of building a strong foundation.
Right.
It's like anything, if you're building a house or you're learning a new skill, you got to have that solid base.
Yeah, you can't skip the basics.
You can't skip the basics.
Right. And the guide specifically mentions vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation.
Yes, those are the building blocks.
So how do we tackle that?
Well, with vocabulary, it's not just about memorizing a million words.
Right.
It's about understanding how to use them correctly in different situations, right?
Context.
Context, exactly. I always think of words as tools,
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, the more tools you have in your toolbox, the better equipped you are to handle different situations.
Right.
So online dictionaries are fantastic for that. Looking up synonyms, exploring those nuances of meaning.
Yeah, and playing with words.
Yeah.
Trying them out, seeing how they sound.
Exactly. And then for grammar, I know a lot of people get intimidated by grammar, but it's really about understanding the structure of the language.
Right.
So you can communicate your ideas clearly.
Right. So it doesn't have to be super strict.
No, it's more about just getting the flow and understanding the basic sentence structure.
Right. The framework.
The framework, yeah. And then there's pronunciation, which can be a big one for people.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you're not pronouncing words correctly, people might not understand you.
Right. And that can be frustrating.
Very frustrating.
For everybody.
Yeah. So the guide mentions Forvo. Have you ever used Forvo?
I have. It's great.
It's so cool.
You can type in any word and hear how native speakers pronounce it.
And there's different accents.
Different accents, yeah. So you can kind of get a feel for how it's said in different parts of the world.
I think that's so important, too, because
Absolutely.
English is spoken all over the world. And not everybody sounds the same.
Exactly.
And that's okay.
Exactly.
And I think also when you're learning to speak another language, I think if you can nail the pronunciation a little bit, I think that can give you a lot more confidence.
Oh, absolutely. Because you feel more comfortable that people are going to understand you.
Exactly.
And you're not going to have to repeat yourself constantly.
Right. And then you can kind of focus more on what you're actually trying to say.
Exactly.
So we've got our foundation down.
We've got our vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. We're feeling good.
We're feeling good.
We're ready to get out there and speak, but
yeah.
How do we get that practice?
Well, the guide emphasizes this idea of regular practice. And they say it doesn't have to be formal or intimidating. You can literally talk to yourself.
Okay. I've heard this.
I know it sounds strange.
I always feel a little weird about this one.
I know, but it's surprisingly effective.
Really?
Think about it. When you're talking to yourself, you're not worried about making mistakes. You're not worried about being judged.
Yeah.
You're just focusing on getting the words out.
Okay.
And the more you do that, the more fluent you'll become.
So when I'm doing the dishes, I should be now I am rinsing the plate.
Exactly.
And now I am putting it in the drying rack.
Or you could be I'm so hungry, I can't wait to eat dinner tonight. Whatever comes to mind.
Oh, that's great.
Just get those words flowing.
That's really good advice, I think.
And another technique the guide mentions is shadowing. Have you heard of this one?
I have, but remind me how it goes.
So basically you listen to a native speaker, whether it's from a podcast, a video, whatever you enjoy.
Okay.
And you try to mimic their rhythm and intonation. So you're basically copying how they're speaking.
Oh, so it's not about the words themselves?
Not necessarily. It's more about the music of the language.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so you're internalizing those natural speech patterns.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And it can be really fun, too.
Yeah, and it kind of goes along with that thing we were talking about, engaging with native content.
Exactly.
Like movies, series, podcasts.
Yes, immerse yourself in the language.
Yeah, that's such a fun way to learn.
It is, and you pick up on so much, slang, idioms, all those little nuances.
Stuff that's not in the textbook.
Exactly, the stuff that makes you sound more natural.
Yeah.
More like a native speaker.
What are some of your favorite podcasts to listen to?
Oh, I love listening to Like storytelling podcasts,
Oh, yeah.
like This American Life, or
I love that one.
yeah, or like true crime podcasts are really popular too.
Yeah, they are.
Those are always really engaging.
And you can learn a lot of new vocabulary.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
especially like legal terms or forensic terms.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
I've been really into like history podcasts lately.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I find it's a good way to like learn about history and also improve my listening skills.
Absolutely. And it's like you said, it's fun. You're learning while you're enjoying yourself.
Exactly. So make it fun. Make
Yes.
something you want to do.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're watching movies, we're listening to podcasts, we're feeling good.
Okay.
But the guide also talks about like seeking out speaking opportunities.
Yes.
And that can be intimidating,
It can be.
right?
Especially if you're not used to speaking English in front of other people.
Like where would we even start?
Well, the guide mentions English clubs,
Yep.
which are great because you can meet other people who are also learning English.
So it's not so scary.
Exactly. It's a supportive environment where you can practice without feeling judged.
I like that.
Yeah.
Like a safe space.
It's a safe space.
Are those usually like in person or?
You can find them both in person and online.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility there.
I like that.
And then there's also things like Toastmasters,
Oh, yeah, Toastmaster.
which is more focused on public speaking.
Right.
So if you need to give presentations in English or you just want to get more comfortable speaking in front of a group,
Yeah.
that's a great option.
I think those are great for confidence building too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, even if it's not something that you think you're going to need for work or whatever, just getting up and speaking in front of people.
It's a valuable skill.
Yeah.
No matter what you do.
Okay, so we don't have to jump into the deep end right away.
No.
We can start small.
Start small. Like what?
Well, even just ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions.
Oh, that's good.
Those are opportunities to practice your speaking skills.
Right. Just little things here and there.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised how much it helps. Yeah, I think that's good advice. And, we live in a time where we have all this technology.
Yes.
So the guide talks about like leveraging technology for language learning.
Oh, absolutely. There's so many great apps out there now.
There are.
It's amazing.
Like, what are some of your favorites?
Well, you've got the traditional ones like Duolingo and Babbel.
Yeah.
Those offer structured lessons. They kind of take you through step by step.
Yeah, I've used those.
Yeah, they're good for building a foundation.
Yeah.
And then there's some newer apps that are really cool,
Ooh, like what?
like Elsa Speak.
Elsa Speak. I've heard of that one.
It's amazing it uses AI to analyze your pronunciation.
What? Yeah.
That's so cool.
And it gives you personalized feedback and exercises.
So it's like a little pronunciation coach
Exactly.
right in your pocket.
Right in your pocket. I know, it's amazing. And then you've got apps that simulate conversations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can practice speaking in a low-pressure environment.
I need to check that out.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That sounds fun.
It is fun. Okay, I'm going to have to look those up.
You should.
I've been using Elsa Speak, actually.
Oh, cool. How do you like it?
I really like it.
Yeah.
I'm working on my fellow sounds.
Oh, yeah. Those can be tricky.
They are tricky.
Yeah.
And it's really good at like telling me like where my tongue should be
Oh, wow.
and how to like shape my mouth.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
That's amazing. It's
Yeah.
like having a personal coach
It is.
in your pocket.
And it's really helping.
That's great.
Yeah,
Technology can be so helpful.
it really can.
Great language learning.
And then another thing that the guide mentioned that I thought was interesting was recording yourself speaking.
Oh, yes. That's a great tip.
It feels so weird.
It can feel awkward,
What?
but it's so valuable.
I've done it before and it does help.
It does, because you can hear yourself
Right.
objectively, and you can identify areas where you need to improve.
Yeah, it's like watching yourself on video.
Exactly. You're like, oh, I didn't realize I did that.
I do that.
Yeah.
I make that face. So it's the same thing for your voice.
Exactly.
And you can compare your recordings to native speakers.
Yes.
See how you measure up.
And focus on things like intonation, pacing, pronunciation, all those little details
Right.
that make a big difference.
Okay, so we're recording ourselves.
We're recording ourselves.
We're practicing. We're talking to ourselves.
We're shadowing.
We're shadowing.
We're immersing ourselves.
We're immersing ourselves.
in the language.
But what if we're still making mistakes?
Oh, that's okay.
Is it
Everybody makes mistakes.
even native speakers?
Even native speakers make mistakes.
I'll make mistakes all the time.
I do too. It's part of the process.
So the guide actually emphasizes fluency over perfection.
Yes.
Right.
It's more important to communicate effectively
Than to be perfect.
than to be grammatically perfect all the time.
Right. Because if you get so caught up in the grammar,
Mm-hmm.
then you can lose the flow.
Exactly. You can get stuck.
Yeah.
And it can actually hinder your fluency.
That's happened to me before.
Oh, I'm sure it's happened to all of us.
Like where I'm trying to think of like the exact right grammatical structure,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just get flustered
Yeah.
and I like can't talk.
I know it's happened to me too, where I'm like trying to remember like, oh, is it the past perfect or the present perfect continuous?
Yeah.
And then I just completely lose my train of thought.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's better to just let it flow.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
And don't be afraid to use those little filler phrases.
Yes.
Like,
Those are natural.
they are natural.
Everybody uses them.
Even native speakers.
Even native speakers use them.
It's part of language.
It's part of language.
Okay, so fluency over perfection.
Fluency over perfection.
But I think also like one of the key takeaways from the guide is like consistency and patience.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
This isn't something that happens overnight.
No,
It's a journey.
it's a journey.
Yeah, so you have to be patient with yourself.
And celebrate the small wins. Like when you finally nail that third sound.
Exactly. Or when you can order your coffee without any hesitation.
Oh, that's a good one.
Those are the moments to celebrate.
Right.
Yeah,
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
we have.
We've talked about building a strong foundation with vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation.
Yes.
We've talked about the importance of practice.
Regular practice
Oh, great.
in any way that you can.
Exactly. And we've talked about like embracing technology and not being afraid to make mistakes.
Exactly.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what's one thing that our listeners can do today
Today.
to start putting these tips into practice?
Well, I would say download a language learning app.
Okay.
There are so many free ones out there.
There are.
Find one that you enjoy and just commit to using it for 15 minutes a day.
I like that 15 minutes a day.
Yeah, or find a conversation partner.
Okay.
You know someone who you can practice speaking with, even if it's just for a few minutes.
Great advice.
Yeah.
I think those are both excellent.
Or even just commit to talking to yourself for 5 minutes a day.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
Just get those words flowing.
Just get those words out.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us for another deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
This was a lot of fun,
It was.
and I hope it was helpful for everyone listening.
I hope so too.
And remember, you are capable of achieving your language goals.
You are.
So keep practicing, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dive in.
Today, we're going to be tackling something pretty big.
Ooh. Lay it on me.
English,
Okay, interesting.
but not like, diagramming sentences and stuff.
Right.
More like English as a global phenomenon. We found this really interesting excerpt,
Yeah.
and it dives deep into what English means for countries where it's not actually the main language.
The primary language. Fascinating.
Yeah, it really got me thinking, like, why is English so powerful? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And then, like, what does all that mean for us, you know?
Trying to navigate this increasingly interconnected world.
Right,
Like,
exactly. I mean, think about it. We can connect with people all over the planet,
it's true.
but how much of that is because of English, you know?
And is that a good thing?
Exactly.
Mm.
Oh, and speaking of connecting with people, it reminded me of this time I was in Italy.
Oh, yeah.
I was so excited to finally have some real Italian coffee, but I could not for the life of me explain what I wanted.
Oh, no.
Ended up with a glass of milk.
Just milk.
Yeah. And the barista was looking at me like I was crazy.
I can imagine. But it really shows you how we just assume everyone speaks the same language.
Right. It's like we take it for granted.
Absolutely. And that's where this whole idea of English as a lingua franca comes in.
Lingua franca.
Yeah. It's basically like a common language that lets people from totally different backgrounds communicate.
Oh, okay. So it's like a universal translator almost.
In a way, yeah. It helps bridge the gap between all these different languages.
That's pretty powerful when you think about it.
It is. But our excerpt does mention there can be some downsides, too. It's not all sunshine and roses.
Oh, right. Like what kinds of downsides?
Well, think about it this way. If most of the world's top universities, all the important academic journals,
Yeah.
and even major scientific discoveries,
Right.
if all of that is mostly in English,
Okay. Yeah.
what does that mean for people who don't speak it fluently?
Wow. I never thought about it like that. It's like an automatic advantage for native English speakers.
Exactly.
And our source even talked about how it affects things like higher education and job opportunities.
Absolutely. It's not just about getting into a good school or landing a specific job either.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine trying to access important information during a global health crisis or something,
That's true.
or even navigating a foreign country. Without knowing English, things could get really tricky.
So it's not just about convenience then.
Right.
It's about access and opportunity. It's almost like knowing English is a type of social currency.
I like that.
Yeah.
Social currency. It really is. And it ties into what the excerpt says about earning potential, too.
You mean like you can make more money if you speak English?
In many industries, yeah, English fluency often translates to higher salaries.
Hmm. Interesting. Like in what kinds of jobs?
Oh, tons of them. International business, tech, even tourism.
Wow. So it's like a whole other level of the global economy opens up.
Exactly.
Crazy.
And there's another layer here that I find super interesting.
Oh, what's that?
The impact on knowledge and technology.
Yeah.
Our source really emphasized how dominant English is in those fields. Scientific papers, tech documentation, all that.
Yeah, like if you can't read those technical manuals or keep up with online forums,
Yeah.
you're kind of missing out on a ton of innovation.
Right. It makes you wonder about those limitations, especially in a world that's constantly changing so fast.
It's true. It really makes you think, who gets to be a part of these advancements? Who benefits from them? And who might be left behind?
Exactly.
But okay, enough of the serious stuff for a sec.
Uh-huh. All right.
What about all the cool stuff we get to experience because of English?
What do you mean?
Like all the music movies, books.
Oh, right.
I remember the first time I saw a Kurosawa film.
Oh, yeah.
Blew my mind. And without subtitles, I wouldn't have had a clue what was going on.
It's a whole world of art and entertainment right at our fingertips.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to this whole idea of cultural exchange.
Something our source really highlighted, English being this, channel for sharing stories, ideas, even different ways of seeing the world.
It's like Hollywood, for example,
Hmm.
or English language music.
It reaches every corner of the globe.
But is there risk of, like, overshadowing other cultures? Like, do we start to think some voices are more important just because they're in English?
That's a really important question. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but it definitely raises the question of responsibility.
Responsibility.
When a language is as powerful as English, we have to be mindful of how we use it.
Right. And that goes for things like diplomacy and international relations, too, right?
Absolutely. The excerpt even mentions how crucial English is for organizations like the UN.
Yeah, all those high-stakes meetings and agreements. I bet it helps when everyone speaks the same language.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
But it also makes you think about what might get lost in translation.
Oh, totally. Even a single word can completely change the meaning of what someone's saying.
Exactly. And think about everyday interactions between people from different countries. Tourists, business people, students studying abroad.
Yeah.
English often becomes the way to build understanding, trust, even friendships.
Speaking of that, it reminds me of this one time I was in rural Japan.
Oh, no. What happened?
I got totally lost trying to ask for directions. My Japanese was terrible.
Uh-huh. Oh, no.
But luckily, a local who spoke English saw me struggling and came to my rescue.
Saved the day.
Big time. Probably saved me from a night lost in the woods.
A classic travel mishap. It just shows you how a shared language can make even the simplest interactions so much smoother.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And our source even talked about the economic benefits for countries that cater to English-speaking tourists.
Right. The travel industry is a perfect example.
It's like everyone wins. Travelers get to experience new places.
And local economies get a boost.
Exactly. So I guess what we've learned today is that English is way more than just grammar and vocabulary.
Much more.
It's a global force that shapes so much of our world.
Everything from education and economics to technology and culture.
It's pretty amazing, but
Yeah.
honestly, it's also a little overwhelming.
It is a lot to think about. But I think the biggest takeaway, and something our source really drove home,
Yeah.
is that English empowers individuals and entire nations to really shape this interconnected world we live in.
But that comes with a lot of responsibility, too.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up today, I think the big question is, how do we use this knowledge about English to build bridges, not walls? And how do we make sure everyone has a chance to participate in the global conversation, no matter what their native language is?
It's definitely something to think about.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. See you next time.
Until next time.
Okay, so we're going deep today on a presidency that, well, let's just say it was a little unconventional.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, just a tad. We're talking Trump. The 45th president. Businessman, reality TV star, and then leader of the free world.
It's certainly a unique resume.
Absolutely. And we've got a whole stack of stuff to dig through here. Articles, economic analyses, foreign policy journals, you name it.
Oh, and don't forget, we even have some firsthand accounts from folks who worked in the White House during his administration.
Right. That's right. So whether you're trying to figure out how we won in 2016 or what America First really meant, or maybe you're just curious about the whole fake news thing, well, stick with us.
We're going to unpack it all.
Exactly. And let me tell you, some of this stuff, it's pretty wild.
You're not kidding.
So let's rewind back to 2016. Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this coming.
Right. I mean, a total political outsider, a businessman, no experience in government whatsoever.
Yeah. And yet somehow he managed to capture the Republican nomination and then go on to defeat Hillary Clinton.
It was a political earthquake, seriously. So what was it about his message that resonated with voters? What were people so drawn to?
Well, I think you've got to look at the Make America Great Again slogan. Those 4 words, they really tapped into a sense of frustration and anxiety that a lot of Americans were feeling.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
There was this feeling that the country had lost its way, that jobs were going overseas, and that the American dream was slipping away.
Right, right.
And Trump, he came in and said, look, I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman, and I know how to make deals. I'm going to bring back jobs, I'm going to make America strong again.
And people, a lot of people, they bought it.
He did. He presented himself as the ultimate outsider, someone who would shake up this system.
And he definitely delivered on that promise.
Oh, yeah, he sure did.
Okay, so let's talk about the economy. One of the biggest things he did was pass that massive tax cut bill in 2017.
The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Yeah, that's the one. And I'm seeing here in these articles, there's a real mixed bag of opinions on it. Some folks are saying it was a huge success, boosted the economy. Others are saying it just helped the rich and blew up the deficit.
Yeah, you're going to find that a lot with Trump. Strong opinions on both sides.
Right. So what's the truth?
Well, like a lot of things in economics, it's complicated. There's no doubt that the tax cuts did stimulate the economy in the short term.
Okay, so some positive effects.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Unemployment went down, the stock market went up, but whether those benefits trickled down to the middle class and working class, that's where the debate gets heated.
Yeah, the sources we have definitely reflect that.
Absolutely. And then there's the long-term impact. Some argue the tax cuts were unsustainable and will lead to bigger problems down the road. Others say they were necessary to keep America competitive globally. It's a tough one to call definitively.
Definitely a topic that'll keep economists busy for a while.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's move on to foreign policy. And I think this is where things get really interesting. Trump comes in with this America First philosophy.
Right, a big departure from, well, pretty much everything that came before.
Totally. And he wasted no time putting it into action. We're talking pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, renegotiating NAFTA, slapping tariffs on China left and right.
It was a whirlwind.
It really was. So what were the big takeaways from all of this? What was the impact of America First?
Well, on the one hand, you could argue it made other countries take notice. Like, okay, America's playing hardball now.
Right, no more Mr. Nice Guy.
Exactly. And some people, especially those who felt that previous administrations had been too willing to compromise American interests, they saw this as a breath of fresh air.
Okay, I can see that.
But on the other hand, it definitely ruffled some feathers.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, understatement of the year. It created tension with traditional allies, like those in Europe. And the trade war with China, well, that had global repercussions.
Right, it wasn't just about those two countries?
Definitely not. It disrupted supply chains, increased prices for consumers. It was a big deal.
Okay, so America First definitely shook things up. But what about his relationships with specific leaders? Like, for example, Kim Jong-un in North Korea. That was something else.
Oh, yeah, the whole summit spectacle.
Yeah,
Totally unprecedented.
totally. And then there's Putin. Lots of talk about those two.
Right. Accusations of being too friendly, of turning a blind eye to Russian interference.
Yeah, that was a constant theme throughout his presidency.
It was. It's hard to say definitively what was going on behind closed doors, but the optics were, well, let's just say they raised eyebrows.
Definitely.
Oh.
Okay, let's turn back to domestic issues. One of the biggest impacts of the Trump presidency was on the Supreme Court. He got to appoint 3 justices, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett.
And those appointments shifted the balance of the court significantly. We're talking about a very conservative majority now, and that's going to have long-lasting effects.
Absolutely. Like, what kind of effects are we talking about?
Well, for one thing, it's likely to have a major impact on things like abortion rights, gun control, environmental regulations, voting rights, really fundamental issues.
Yeah, no small potatoes.
Not at all. These are the kinds of rulings that can shape American society for generations.
So pretty significant legacy right there.
Definitely. And it's something that both sides of the political spectrum were keenly aware of during his presidency. The Supreme Court was a huge issue.
Rightly so. Okay, another hot button issue that defined the Trump years, immigration. Specifically, that border wall he kept talking about.
Right. From day one of his campaign, he made it clear that cracking down on illegal immigration was a top priority. And the wall, that became the symbol of it all.
It definitely did, and it was incredibly divisive. Supporters saw it as a necessary step to protect the country's borders. Opponents saw it as wasteful, xenophobic, even cruel.
You're right, very polarizing. And it sparked a lot of debate about what it means to be American, what America's role in the world should be. Really big questions.
Yeah, deep stuff. Okay, so we can't talk about the Trump presidency without talking about COVID-19. I mean, the pandemic just completely upended everything.
It did. It dominated the last year of his presidency, and it really put his leadership to the test.
For sure. And there were a lot of criticisms of his handling of the crisis. Everything from the initial downplaying of the virus to the mixed messages about masks and social distancing.
Right, and then the whole push for unproven treatments, the clashes with public health officials, it was a very tumultuous time.
It was. And then, of course, there was the economic fallout, businesses shutting down, millions of people losing their jobs. It was just a massive shock to the system.
Yeah, and it's hard to separate Trump's handling of the pandemic from the political climate at the time. There was so much polarization, so much distrust.
Absolutely. It felt like everyone was retreating to their corners, and it made having a rational conversation about the virus almost impossible.
You're right. And that, unfortunately, made addressing the crisis even more difficult.
Okay, so then we get to the 2020 election, which, well, let's just say it didn't exactly go smoothly.
Yeah, understatement of the century.
Right. First, you have Trump refusing to concede, making all sorts of claims about voter fraud. Then you have the January 6th attack on the Capitol, which was just, I mean, where do you even begin with that?
It was a dark day for American democracy. A mob of Trump supporters storming the Capitol building, trying to stop the certification of the election results.
And Trump, he was impeached for a second time for inciting that insurrection.
Right. He was acquitted by the Senate, but it was a very close vote. And it really underscored how deeply divided the country had become.
Absolutely. Okay, so throughout all of this, one thing that really stands out is Trump's communication style. I mean, the guy was constantly tweeting, attacking his opponents, calling the media fake news. It was like nothing we'd ever seen before.
You're right. It was a complete departure from the way presidents had traditionally communicated. He basically bypassed the media and spoke directly to the people through Twitter.
And that had a huge impact. I mean, for one thing, it allowed him to control the narrative, to get his message out there unfiltered. But it also contributed to this erosion of trust in traditional media institutions.
Absolutely. And it really blurred the lines between what was real and what was fake, what was news and what was opinion.
Right, and that's something we're still grappling with today.
Definitely. The whole fake news phenomenon, it didn't start with Trump, but he definitely weaponized it. And it's had a lasting impact on our political discourse.
For sure. Okay, so after all of this, after 4 years of nonstop chaos and controversy, what's the verdict? What's Trump's lasting legacy?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't think there's any easy answer. He was a polarizing figure, to say the least.
Yeah, you can say that again.
On the one hand, he energized a segment of the population that felt ignored by the political establishment. He shook things up in Washington, challenged conventional wisdom, and in some ways, maybe he made people think differently about certain issues.
Okay, yeah, like what kind of issues?
Well, trade, for example. He really brought that to the forefront. And it forced people to confront some uncomfortable truths about globalization.
Right.
And immigration, too. He tapped into some very real anxieties that people had about that issue, and he changed the conversation in a way that I don't think anyone could have predicted.
Yeah, he definitely had a knack for that, tapping into those underlying currents.
He did. But on the other hand, there's no denying that he also exacerbated divisions in this country. His rhetoric was often inflammatory, and he seemed to relish in pitting people against each other.
Yeah, that's definitely something that comes through in the sources we have.
It does. And I think it's fair to say that his presidency left a lot of scars, both here in the U.S. and on the global stage.
So where does that leave us? What happens now?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Hmm?
Trump may be out of office, but his influence is still very much felt. The Republican Party is still grappling with his legacy, and the issues he brought to the forefront, those haven't gone away.
Right. So it's almost like we're still living in the shadow of his presidency.
I think that's a fair assessment. And it's going to take a while for us to fully understand the long-term impact of what we just went through.
So what do you think? Was the Trump presidency a blip on the radar? A temporary detour from the norm? Or did it fundamentally change the course of American history?
Honestly, I don't know that we can answer that question yet. Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, it was a period of profound change and upheaval, and it's something that we'll be talking about for years to come.
Well, you've definitely given me a lot to think about. Thanks for diving into this with me. It's clear that the Trump presidency was, well, it was something else.
It was. And I think we're all still trying to make sense of it.
Absolutely. And to all of you listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride, but hey, that's history for you. Always full of surprises.
And sometimes those surprises are bigger than we could ever imagine.
Truer words have never been spoken. All right, that's it for today. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
And keep an open mind. You never know what history is going to throw at you next.
Could have said it better myself. All right, everyone, ready to dive in. Today we're tackling something pretty much everyone's thought about at one point or another: learning English.
It's a big one for sure.
It is. And we've got this awesome guide just chock full of tips and strategies. We're going to break it all down into clear, actionable steps.
Whether you're just starting out or you've been at it a while and want to level up, stick with us.
Exactly. You're in for a treat. So this guide doesn't just throw random tips at you. It really emphasizes starting with a strong foundation.
Yeah, goal setting. It's kind of a crucial first step that a lot of people skip over.
It's so true. The guide talks about these things called SMART goals.
Oh yeah, SMART goals.
I'll be honest. At first I thought it was like, corporate jargon or something. But it actually makes so much sense for language learning.
It really does.
Instead of just having this vague idea, I want to learn English, you get super specific.
Right, measurable goals.
Like, I'm going to learn 10 new words every single day for the next month.
That's a great example. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time-bound, the whole shebang.
It gives you that clear roadmap. It's like you wouldn't just hop in your car and start driving without knowing where you're going, right?
Exactly. And having that clear destination in mind keeps you motivated, keeps you focused, which is super important when you're learning something new.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so after setting those goals, the guide dives into building vocabulary, which I got to admit, I've always struggled with just like memorizing random words from a list.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
It just feels like stuffing your brain with a bunch of useless trivia sometimes.
Right. You don't see the connections.
But this guide, it suggests starting with everyday words and phrases, the stuff you'd actually use in real life.
Yeah.
Which makes so much more sense to me.
It's practical.
Yeah. Like, why am I learning this super obscure word if I'm never going to use it?
And even beyond just the words themselves, it emphasizes learning them in context.
Ooh, what does that mean exactly?
So instead of just having like flashcards with rain on one side and umbrella on the other, you'd create a sentence like, when it started to rain, I quickly opened my umbrella. So you're not just learning the individual words, but how they connect.
That's amazing. It's like you're learning a dance move, not just the individual steps. You see how it all fits together, the purpose.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got our goals, we're building our vocabulary, now let's get real.
Let's do it.
Pronunciation.
Ah, yes.
I have heard some horror stories about people just like butchering words and not even realizing it.
It happens.
It's scary. So the guide suggests really immersing yourself in the sounds of English, listening to podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube, all that good stuff. But is just listening enough?
It's a great start, but it's really about active practice, like mimicking what you hear, paying attention to the subtle sounds. And there are some awesome apps out there that can help with that.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, there's one called Elsa Speak, which focuses specifically on pronunciation. It's like having a personal pronunciation coach in your pocket.
Wow. What does it do?
It analyzes your speech and gives you targeted feedback, pinpointing areas where you can improve.
That's so cool.
And then there are apps like HelloTalk, which connect you with native speakers for language exchange so you get real-time practice.
Oh, that's a win-win. I'm downloading all these as we speak. Okay, so we're listening, we're practicing our pronunciation, but what about actually speaking? Like holding a conversation?
That's where it all comes together.
I know, but the guide talks about watching movies and TV shows, which sounds fun in theory, but I feel like I'd just be glued to the subtitles the whole time.
You know what? That's actually a great strategy. They recommend starting with subtitles in your native language and then gradually transitioning to English subtitles as you get more comfortable. It's like training wheels.
Oh, that's a good analogy. I like that.
And don't underestimate those language exchange programs and online communities we talked about earlier. Websites like Tandem, Conversation Exchange, italki.
Those are great.
They connect you with native speakers who are learning your language, so you can help each other out and practice in a real-world setting.
I bet you pick up some cool slang and idioms that way, too.
Definitely. The real deal.
Another tip that stood out to me was recording yourself speaking.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I'll admit, the thought of hearing my own voice makes me cringe, but the guide says it can be super effective for pinpointing those areas where you need to improve.
Think of it like watching game footage of yourself, you know? You can objectively see what you're doing well and where you can step up your game.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It can be humbling, but it's incredibly valuable.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about reading.
Love it.
Me too. I love reading, but I'll be honest, picking up an English book can be a bit daunting sometimes, especially like a big, thick novel.
It can feel overwhelming.
It does. So the guide actually recommends starting with simpler materials, like children's books or comics.
Those are great starting points.
Yeah, they have a more limited vocabulary, simpler sentence structure, less overwhelming.
Exactly. And as you get more confident, you can gradually work your way up to those newspapers, those blogs, those novels.
And of course, having a good dictionary on hand is crucial. Don't be afraid to look up words you don't know. It's like having a cheat code for understanding.
Absolutely.
Speaking of putting those words to work, let's talk about writing. The guide suggests journaling in English, writing emails, even trying your hand at short stories. It's like a workout for your writing muscles.
I love that analogy. And there are so many great tools out there to help you along the way, like Grammarly.
Grammarly is amazing. It catches those pesky grammar errors, even suggests better word choices.
It's like having a personal editor in your pocket.
It really is. Okay, we can't forget about the grammar elephant in the room.
Ah, yes, grammar.
Yeah.
The big one.
The guide acknowledges that, yeah, grammar is important, but it also makes this great point.
What's that?
Communication is the priority.
Especially at those beginning stages.
Don't get so bogged down in the minutia of grammar rules that you're afraid to even open your mouth.
It's better to make a few mistakes and actually get your point across than to be paralyzed by the fear of getting it wrong.
It's like learning to ride a bike, right? You don't need to know the physics of balance to get started.
Just hop on and try.
Exactly. But of course, once you've got the basics down, the guide does suggest some really great resources for really honing your grammar skills.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Like Raymond Murphy's English Grammar in Use, or websites like BBC Learning English or InVid.
Those are classics, so helpful.
They are. And speaking of helpful resources, we have to talk about technology.
Yes, language learning apps are booming these days.
That's amazing. Duolingo, Babbel, Rosetta Stone, Memrise, the list goes on.
They each offer different approaches, so you can find one that really clicks with your learning style.
It's like having an entire language school in your pocket.
Right at your fingertips.
But the guide goes beyond just language learning apps.
What do you mean?
It also talks about the idea of learning in English,
Oh, I like that.
using platforms like BBC Learning English, Coursera, Khan Academy. You're not just studying the language, you're using it as a tool to learn about other stuff that interests you.
It's like you shift your mindset from, ugh, I have to study, to, oh, I'm using English to learn about history, or whatever your passion is.
And that's so much more engaging. Plus, let's be real, who doesn't love a good game or quiz?
I'm a big fan.
Right. There are tons of fun resources online that make learning feel like a game.
Gamification is a game changer.
It really is.
Oh.
Okay, now for my personal favorite part, immersion. This is where things get really interesting.
Lay it on me.
The guide talks about changing your phone and social media settings to English. Simple, but effective.
It's those little tweaks that make a difference.
Totally. And here's another mind-blowing tip. Try thinking in English.
Whoa, that's next level.
Instead of translating from your native language, catch yourself doing that and make a conscious effort to form your thoughts directly in English.
That's like rewiring your brain.
It kind of is. And of course, surrounding yourself with English language content.
Podcasts, music, books, movies.
Make it a part of your daily life.
And think beyond just entertainment. Like, change the language settings on your computer, even on your appliances if they have that option.
Wow, I never even thought of that.
The more you expose yourself to the language, the more natural it becomes.
It's like building this English-speaking bubble around yourself.
Exactly. You're living and breathing it.
Okay, so we've covered so much ground here, from goal setting to immersion. But the one thing that really stuck with me is this emphasis on consistency.
Ah, yes. The key to success in pretty much anything.
If we connect it back to the bigger picture, it's about building a habit.
Just like going to the gym or brushing your teeth.
Make English a part of your daily routine, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
And celebrate those small victories along the way. High-five yourself for learning those 10 new words. or for finally grasping that tricky grammar rule.
Get those little wins that keep you going. And remember, if you feel like you need that extra push or accountability, don't hesitate to consider a class or a tutor.
Sometimes having that structured guidance can make a world of difference.
It really can. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are a couple of key takeaways you think will really resonate with our listeners?
Definitely setting those SMART goals right from the get-go. That's huge.
Mm.
And really embracing that idea of immersion, creating that English-speaking bubble.
I love those. And remember, fluency takes time. Be patient with yourself, enjoy the journey, and don't be afraid to make those mistakes.
Mistakes are just stepping stones. They're proof that you're learning.
Exactly. Now, I'm curious, what's one small step you, the listener, can take today to apply something you've learned from this deep dive?
The possibilities are endless.
Download an app, watch a video in English. Maybe even just challenge yourself to think in English for a few minutes. The power is in your hands.
Go for it.
That's all for today's Deep Dive, everyone. Happy learning.
See you next time.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something that can trip up even the best of us.
Oh, yeah.
Common English grammar mistakes.
Definitely.
We've got a handy guide here that breaks down 10 of the trickiest ones.
It sounds good.
And don't worry, we're not here to make you sweat over grammar rules.
No, not at all.
Think of this as a friendly reminder of how to make your English shine.
Right.
Whether you're writing an email or just chatting with a friend.
Absolutely.
So are you ready to dive in and polish up your English skills?
Let's do it.
Okay. Mistake number 1 is a classic.
Okay.
Your versus your.
The classic.
I know I've mixed those up a time or two myself.
Oh, yeah, me too.
But this guide has a neat trick.
Okay.
It says to try saying the sentence out loud with you are in place of your. If it makes sense, then you're good to go.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Right.
Yeah, you can really hear the difference.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you're amazing at baking works because you can say, you are amazing at baking. But if you're talking about a cake, you'd say, your cake is delicious because our cake is delicious. Doesn't make sense.
Exactly. One little apostrophe can completely change the meaning.
It really does. And speaking of apostrophes causing confusion, our next mistake is another one that trips people up.
Okay.
It's versus it's.
Oh, yeah. This one always makes me pause for a second.
Yeah.
But the guide points out that it's similar to your and your.
Okay.
If you could replace the word with it is, then use it's with the apostrophe.
Right. So you'd say, it's a beautiful day, or it's been a while since I've seen you.
Right.
But if you're talking about something belonging to something else, you drop the apostrophe.
Okay.
Like the dog wagged its tail.
Okay. I think I'm starting to get the hang of these apostrophes.
Good.
Now let's move on to mistake number 3, subject-verb agreement.
Okay.
What does that even mean?
It's pretty simple, actually.
Okay.
It just means making sure the verb in your sentence matches up with the subject. If you have a singular subject, you need a singular verb. And if you have a plural subject, you need a plural verb.
So like, he walked to the store.
Exactly. You wouldn't say that because he is singular and walk is plural.
Right.
You would say he walks to the store.
Got it. And I bet this is one of those mistakes that can slip by even when we're speaking right.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in what you're trying to say and not always pay attention to those small details.
Yeah.
But being mindful of subject-verb agreement can make a big difference in how clearly you communicate.
Especially in writing.
Especially in writing.
Okay. On to mistake number 4, adverb placement.
Okay.
Now, I'll admit adverbs can be a bit tricky.
They can be, but the guide explains that adverbs modify verbs, telling us how an action is performed.
Right.
And they often end in absply. The key is to place them close to the verb they're describing.
So instead of saying she danced graceful,
Yay.
you'd say she danced gracefully.
Exactly. It's a subtle change, but it makes the sentence much smoother and grammatically correct.
Okay, so far we've covered apostrophes, subject-verb agreement, and adverb placement. Feeling confident?
I hope so, but we're only getting started.
Oh, no.
Up next is a mistake that even native English speakers struggle with.
Oh, boy.
Me versus I.
Ooh, yeah. Is it John and me went to the movies or John and I went to the movies?
The guide offers a really helpful tip for this one.
Okay.
The drop the other person test.
Okay.
Imagine, John, would you say me went to the movie or I went to the movie?
I went to the movies.
Exactly. So the correct sentence would be, John and I went to the movies.
That little trick can save you from a lot of pronoun confusion.
Absolutely.
I'll definitely be using that one. All right, ready for mistake number 6.
Let's hear it.
This one's about much versus many.
Okay.
I remember learning this in school, but a refresher never hurts.
Never hurts.
It all comes down to countable and uncountable nouns.
Right.
Much is used for things you can't count, like water, advice, or time. You wouldn't say many waters, would you?
That sounds strange.
You'd say much water.
Much water, exactly.
Okay, on the other hand, many is for things you can count, like books, cars, or friends.
Right.
So you'd say many books or many friends.
Exactly.
Thinking about whether I can actually count something helps me remember which word to use.
And that's the key. It's about understanding the logic behind the rule, not just memorizing it.
Okay, let's keep this momentum going.
Okay.
Mistake number 7 tackles those small but mighty words.
Oh, yeah.
Articles, and, the. I never realized how much they actually do.
I know, right?
They might seem insignificant, but articles are essential for making your English clear and grammatically correct. They help us distinguish between general and specific nouns.
Right.
Like, I want to buy a car. It just sounds incomplete, right?
It does. You need to add an article to specify what kind of car.
Hmm.
If you're talking about any car, you'd say, I want to buy a car.
All right.
But if you're talking about a specific car you have in mind, you'd say, I want to buy the car with the red leather seats.
I see the article tells us whether we're talking about something specific or something general.
Exactly.
Wow, those little words are doing a lot of heavy
They
lifting.
really are.
Okay, 3 more mistakes to go. I'm feeling pretty good about this so far.
Great.
What's up next?
Mistake number 8 is an interesting one, especially for those learning English as a second language.
Okay.
It involves how we talk about age in English.
Oh, this is one I've definitely seen people get tripped up on.
Yeah, in English, we don't have an age. We are an age.
Okay.
So instead of saying I have 20 years, you would say I am 20 years old.
That's a subtle difference.
It is.
But I can see how it could be confusing if you're used to expressing it differently in your native language.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that just takes practice.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Now let's tackle mistake number 9, double negatives.
Oh.
I remember my English teacher drilling this into our heads. Never use 2 negatives in a sentence.
It's a classic grammar rule. And for good reason, using 2 negatives can make your sentences confusing and contradict what you're trying to say.
Like saying, I don't have nothing to wear, actually means you do have something to wear.
Exactly. It's like the negatives cancel each other out.
Right.
Instead, you should say, I don't have anything to wear, or I have nothing to wear. 1 negative is all you need.
So it's about being clear and concise, right?
Exactly.
No need to double down on the negative.
No double negatives.
Okay, we're on the last one. What's the final grammar mistake we're going to conquer today?
Our 10th mistake involves the tricky world of prepositions.
Oh.
They can be a real challenge even for experienced English speakers.
I can definitely relate to that. Connie Den, sometimes it feels like there are no clear rules for prepositions.
Yeah.
And you just have to memorize which one goes with which word.
That's true to some extent, but the guide emphasizes that the best way to learn prepositions is by paying close attention to how they're used in context.
Okay.
It's about learning specific phrases and combinations rather than trying to apply general rules.
So like saying, I'm good in English
Right. That's actually incorrect.
is incorrect.
The correct way to express that is I'm good at English.
Good at is the preposition we use when talking about our abilities.
Exactly. There are a lot of phrases like this in English where a specific preposition is always used.
Wow. So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From apostrophes to prepositions, we've tackled 10 common English grammar mistakes. But before we move on to part 2 of this deep dive, I want to ask you,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on?
Oh, I think it's amazing how
Yeah.
these seemingly small grammar points can have such a big impact on how we communicate. And even though we've been focusing on mistakes, I think it's important to remember that everyone makes them.
Oh, for sure.
It's all part of the learning process.
I totally agree. This guide actually emphasizes that making mistakes is natural and we shouldn't be afraid of them.
Right.
It's more about recognizing those mistakes and learning from them.
Exactly. And the more we practice and pay attention to these details, the better we become at using English correctly and confidently.
That's so true. It's like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
And this guide does a great job of making grammar feel less intimidating and more like something we can all improve on.
I agree. It's presented in a way that's clear, concise, and even a bit fun.
Yeah.
The examples are really helpful in seeing how these grammar rules work in real-life situations.
Absolutely. And, you know, one thing that stood out to me was that say it out loud trick for your and your.
Oh, yeah.
It's so simple, but it really works.
Right?
Sometimes hearing the words helps me catch those little differences.
It's like engaging a different part of your brain, and it's a strategy you can use for other grammar points, too. Sometimes reading your writing out loud can help you spot errors you might have missed when reading silently.
That's a great tip. I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah.
And speaking of handy tips, I love that drop the other person test for me and
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
it takes all the guesswork out of choosing the right pronoun.
It's a simple but powerful tool, and it highlights how understanding the logic behind a grammar rule can make it so much easier to remember and apply.
So true. It's not about memorizing a bunch of rules, but about understanding why those rules exist and how they help us communicate effectively.
Exactly. And I think this deep dive has done a great job of showing that grammar isn't just about rules and regulations.
Mm.
It's about using language in a way that's clear, precise, and engaging.
And, you know, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about all the different situations where good grammar really matters.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about writing formal essays or reports.
Huh.
It's about everything from crafting engaging social media posts to writing a compelling email.
You're absolutely right. In today's world where we're constantly communicating through writing, whether it's emails, texts, or online posts, having a good grasp of grammar is so valuable.
Yeah, it can make a real difference in how we come across to others and how effectively we get our message across.
Without a doubt, and in a professional setting, strong grammar skills can really enhance your credibility and make you stand out as someone who pays attention to detail.
That's a really good point. So even though grammar might seem like a dry or technical topic,
Yeah,
it actually has a direct impact on our personal and professional lives.
it really does. And I think this deep dive has been a great reminder that grammar doesn't have to be intimidating.
Right.
It's a tool that we can all use to make our communication more effective and impactful.
I completely agree. And as we continue to learn and grow, it's important to remember that language is constantly evolving.
That's right. New words and phrases are emerging all the time, and the way we use language is always changing.
So while it's important to have a strong foundation in grammar, we also need to be flexible and adaptable to those changes.
Exactly. Language is a living, breathing thing, and part of the fun is seeing how it evolves and adapts over time.
Yeah.
But having a solid understanding of the basic rules helps us navigate those changes with confidence.
Well said. And that brings up a question that I've been pondering. How do we strike a balance between maintaining grammatical correctness and embracing the natural evolution of language?
That's a fascinating question,
Yeah.
and one that I think is worth exploring further.
Yeah.
After all, language is about more than just following rules. It's about expression, creativity, and connection.
I completely agree. And it's that human element of language that makes it so captivating.
Absolutely. It's what makes language so dynamic and engaging.
So how do we reconcile those two sides?
Hmm.
The need for structure and the beauty of evolution.
Well, I think the key lies in understanding that
Yeah.
grammar provides a framework, not a straitjacket.
Huh?
It gives us the tools to communicate effectively,
Mhm.
but it shouldn't stifle our creativity or prevent us from embracing the natural evolution of language.
That's a great way to put it, a framework, not a straitjacket.
Exactly.
So it's like having guidelines that help us stay on track,
Right.
but also allow for flexibility and personal expression.
Think of it like learning to play an instrument.
Okay.
You start by learning the basic notes and scales, but once you have that foundation, you can improvise and create your own music.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So grammar is like the musical scales, and our communication is the melody we create.
Precisely. And just as music can be both structured and spontaneous, language can be both grammatically correct and creatively expressive.
And that creativity is what makes language so fascinating.
It does.
Think about how slang and colloquialisms add color and personality to our conversations.
Oh, yeah.
They might bend or even break traditional grammar rules, but they add a richness and authenticity to the way we communicate.
Absolutely. They reflect the ever-changing nature of language and how it adapts to reflect the culture and experiences of its speakers. And often those informal expressions eventually become so widely used that they become part of the standard language.
It's like language is constantly evolving and reinventing itself, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. And it reminds me of something we talked about earlier, the importance of context.
Oh, context is crucial, the way we use language. The words we choose, the grammar we employ. It all depends on the situation, the audience, and the purpose of our communication.
Right. What might be perfectly acceptable in a casual text message to a friend might be totally inappropriate in a formal email to your boss.
Exactly. Understanding the nuances of language and knowing how to adapt your communication style to different contexts is a valuable skill. And that's where a solid understanding of grammar comes in handy. It gives you the tools to navigate those different situations with confidence.
So it's like grammar's our secret weapon, helping us communicate effectively, no matter who we're talking to or what we're talking about.
I like that it's about having the knowledge and skills to use language strategically and make sure our message is clear, concise, and impactful.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I can't help but think back to the guide's emphasis on embracing mistakes as part of the learning process.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we don't have to be perfect to be effective communicators.
Yeah. Absolutely. Making mistakes is natural, and it's actually how we learn and grow. The key is to view those mistakes as opportunities for improvement, not as setbacks.
So it's about having a growth mindset
Yeah.
and recognizing that language learning is a continuous journey, not a destination.
Well said, and I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners.
Yeah,
Embrace the challenge. Be curious, and don't be afraid to experiment with language.
I completely agree. And remember, even the most experienced writers and speakers make mistakes from time to
Yeah,
time.
yeah, it happens to all of
It's all
us.
part of the process.
That's right. It's what keeps language interesting and dynamic, and it reminds us that language is a human endeavor subject to all the quirks and imperfections that make us human.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
exploring the intricacies of English grammar, the importance of context, and the ever-evolving nature of language.
Definitely.
We've even touched on the philosophy of language and how it reflects our human experience.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope our listeners have gained some valuable insights and practical tips to enhance their own English communication skills.
Me too. And remember, it's all about progress, not perfection. Keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep having fun with language.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
These seemingly small grammar points can have such a big impact on how we communicate.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And even though we've been focusing on mistakes,
Right.
it's important to remember that everyone makes them.
Oh,
It's all part of the learning process.
I totally agree. This guide actually emphasizes that making mistakes is natural and we shouldn't be afraid of them.
Yeah, you shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes.
It's more about recognizing those mistakes and learning from them.
Exactly. And the more we practice and pay attention to these details,
Right.
the better we become at using English correctly and confidently.
That's so true. It's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you
Yeah.
get at it.
Yeah.
And this guide does a great job of making grammar feel less intimidating
I agree.
and more like something we can all improve on.
Yeah, it's presented in a way that's clear, concise, and even a bit fun.
Yeah.
The examples are really helpful in seeing how these grammar rules work in real-life situations.
Absolutely. And one thing that stood out to me was that say it out loud trick for your and your.
Oh, yeah,
It's so simple, but it really works.
it does.
Sometimes hearing the words helps me catch those little differences.
It's like engaging a different part of your brain, and it's a strategy you can use for other grammar points, too. Sometimes reading your writing out loud can help you spot errors you might have missed when reading silently.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to try that. And speaking of handy tips, I love that drop the other person test for me and I.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It takes all the guesswork out of choosing the right pronoun.
It's a simple but powerful tool, and it highlights how understanding the logic behind a grammar rule can make it so much easier to remember and apply.
So true. It's not about memorizing a bunch of rules,
Right.
but about understanding why those rules exist
Yeah.
and how they help us communicate effectively.
Exactly. And I think this deep dive has done a great job of showing that grammar isn't just about rules and regulations. It's about using language in a way that's clear, precise, and engaging.
And, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about all the different situations where good grammar really matters.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's not just about writing formal essays or
Yeah.
reports. It's
Yeah.
about everything from crafting and engaging social media posts
Yeah,
to writing a compelling email.
you're absolutely right. In today's world where we're constantly communicating through writing, whether it's emails, texts, or online posts, having a good grasp of grammar is a valuable asset.
It can make a real difference in how we come across to others and how effectively we get our message across.
Without a doubt, and in a professional setting, strong grammar skills can really enhance your credibility
Yeah.
and make you stand out as someone who pays attention to detail.
That's a really good point. So
Yeah.
even though grammar might seem like a dry or technical topic,
Yeah, it can seem that
it
way.
actually has a direct impact on our personal and professional lives.
It really does. And I think this deep dive has been a great reminder that grammar doesn't have to be intimidating.
Right.
It's a tool that we can all use to make our communication more effective and impactful.
I completely agree. And as we continue to learn and grow, it's important to remember that language is constantly evolving.
That's right. New words and phrases are emerging all the time.
Yeah.
And the way we use language is always changing.
So while it's important to have a strong foundation in grammar,
Yeah.
we also need to be flexible and adaptable to those changes.
Exactly. Language is a living, breathing thing, and part of the fun is seeing how it evolves and adapts over time.
Mhm.
But having a solid understanding of the basic rules helps us navigate those changes with confidence.
Well said. And that brings up a question that I've been pondering. How do we strike a balance between maintaining grammatical correctness
Right.
and embracing the natural evolution of language?
That's a fascinating question and one that I think is worth exploring further. After all, language is about more than just following rules.
Mm,
It's about expression, creativity, and connection.
I completely agree. And it's that human element of language that makes it so captivating.
Absolutely. It's what makes language so dynamic and engaging.
So how do we reconcile those two sides,
Mhm.
the need for structure and the beauty of evolution?
Well, I think the key lies in understanding that grammar provides a framework, not a straitjacket.
Okay.
It gives us the tools to communicate effectively, but it shouldn't stifle our creativity or prevent us from embracing the natural evolution of language.
That's a great way to put it. A framework, not a straitjacket.
Exactly.
So it's like having guidelines that help us stay on track, but also allow for flexibility and personal expression.
Think of it like learning to play an instrument. You start by learning the basic notes and scales.
Right.
But once you have that foundation, you can improvise and create your own music.
I love that analogy.
Hmm.
So grammar is like the musical scales, and our communication is the melody we create.
Precisely. And just as music can be both structured and spontaneous, language can be both grammatically correct and creatively expressive.
And that creativity is what makes language so fascinating. Think about how slang and colloquialisms add color and personality to our
Oh,
conversations.
yeah, definitely.
They might bend or even break traditional grammar rules,
Right.
but they add a richness and authenticity to the way we communicate.
Absolutely. They reflect the ever-changing nature of language and how it adapts to reflect the culture and experiences of its speakers. And often those informal expressions eventually become so widely used that they become part of the standard language.
It's like language is constantly evolving and reinventing itself, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. And it reminds me of something we talked about earlier, the importance of context.
Oh, context is crucial, the way we use language. The words we choose, the grammar we employ, it all depends on the situation, the audience, and the purpose of our communication.
Right. What might be perfectly acceptable in a casual text message to a friend might be totally inappropriate in a formal email to your boss.
Exactly. Understanding the nuances of language and knowing how to adapt your communication style to different contexts is a valuable skill. And that's where a solid understanding of grammar comes in handy. It gives you the tools to navigate those different situations with confidence.
So it's like grammar is our secret weapon, helping us communicate effectively no matter who we're talking to or what we're talking about.
I like that. It's about having the knowledge and skills to use language strategically
Right.
and make sure our message is clear, concise, and impactful.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I can't help but think back to the guide's emphasis on embracing mistakes as part of the learning process. It's a reminder that we don't have to be perfect to be effective communicators.
Absolutely. Making mistakes is natural, and it's actually how we learn and grow. The key is to view those mistakes as opportunities for improvement, not as setbacks.
So it's about having a growth mindset and recognizing that language learning is a continuous journey, not a destination.
Well said, and I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners.
Yeah,
Embrace the challenge, be curious, and don't be afraid to experiment with language.
I completely agree. And remember, even the most experienced writers and speakers make mistakes from time to time.
Oh, yeah, it happens to all of us.
It's all part of the process.
That's right. It's what keeps language interesting and dynamic.
Mm.
And it reminds us that language is a human endeavor,
Yeah.
subject to all the quirks and imperfections that make us human.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, exploring the intricacies of English grammar, the importance of context, and the ever-evolving nature of language.
Oh, yeah.
You've even touched on the philosophy of language and how it reflects our human experience.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope our listeners have gained some valuable insights and practical tips to enhance their own English communication skills.
Me too. And remember, it's all about progress, not perfection. Keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep having fun with language.
Gives us the tools to communicate effectively, but it shouldn't stifle our creativity or prevent us from embracing the natural evolution of language.
That's a great way to put it. A framework, not a straitjacket. So it's like having guidelines that help us stay on track, but also allow for flexibility and personal expression.
Think of it like learning to play an instrument. You start by learning the basic notes and scales, but once you have that foundation, you can improvise and create your own music.
I love that analogy. So grammar is like the musical scales, and our communication is the melody we create.
It's a Precisely. And just as music can be both structured and spontaneous, language can be both grammatically correct and creatively expressive.
And that creativity is what makes language so fascinating. Think about how slang and colloquialisms add color and personality to our conversations.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They might bend or even break traditional grammar rules, but they add a richness and authenticity to the way we communicate.
Absolutely. They reflect the ever-changing nature of language and how it adapts to reflect the culture and experiences of its speakers. And often those informal expressions eventually become so widely used that they become part of the standard language.
It's like language is constantly evolving and reinventing itself, which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something we talked about earlier, the importance of context.
Oh, context is crucial, the way we use language. The words we choose, the grammar we employ, it all depends on the situation, the audience, and the purpose of our communication.
Right. What might be perfectly acceptable in a casual text message to a friend might be totally inappropriate in a formal email to your boss.
Exactly. Understanding the nuances of language and knowing how to adapt your communication style to different contexts is a valuable skill. And that's where a solid understanding of grammar comes in handy. It gives you the tools to navigate those different situations with confidence.
So it's like grammar is our secret weapon, helping us communicate effectively no matter who we're talking to or what we're talking about.
I like that. It's about having the knowledge and skills to use language strategically and make sure our message is clear, concise, and impactful.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I can't help but think back to the guide's emphasis on embracing mistakes as part of the learning process. It's a reminder that we don't have to be perfect to be effective communicators.
Absolutely. Making mistakes is natural, and it's actually how we learn and grow. The key is to view those mistakes as opportunities for improvement, not as setbacks.
So it's about having a growth mindset and recognizing that language learning is a continuous journey, not a destination.
Well said, and I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners. Embrace the challenge, be curious, and don't be afraid to experiment with language.
I completely agree. And remember, even the most experienced writers and speakers make mistakes from time to time. It's all part of the process.
That's right. It's what keeps language interesting and dynamic. And it reminds us that language is a human endeavor subject to all the quirks and imperfections that make us human.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today exploring the intricacies of English grammar, the importance of context, and the ever-evolving nature of language. We even touched on the philosophy of language and how it reflects our human experience.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope our listeners have gained some valuable insights and practical tips to enhance their own English communication skills.
Me too. And remember, it's all about progress, not perfection. Keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep having fun with language. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.